Hearken warriors, welcome to the Brothers Gadenne Podcast, where we prepare you for the fury of emergencies, disasters, and the battles of everyday life. For Elder Verism, let us begin. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. It's a quote from George Bernard Shaw, famed Irish playwright. So what is an Irish playwright doing in the Brothers Gadenne podcast? What are we talking about today?
Does it have anything to do with surviving playwrights? How to get through them?
Surviving Irish?
And that's a whole different story itself. But yeah. Today we're talking about communication.
Right, the art of comms. So we're going to talk about how do we communicate when we don't have the best means. So when things go wrong, when grid goes down, that sort of theory, but also how we just communicate normally.
Which I think is super undervalued, super important. So communication, the word itself covers a lot of ground. We're going to focus specifically on long-distance communications. We might talk a little bit about interhuman communications as well, because that'll be covered. But it's super important. I think if we think about a lot of our disaster scenarios or things that can and will go wrong, some of the biggest causes of these is miscommunication, lack of communication, communication issues and problems in general.
Which is why I like that quote right at the start there, that the single biggest problem with communications is that you don't actually know that it's happened a lot of the time. We take it for granted, and if we have anything other than our phone, then it can become quite difficult to know that we are being heard by someone, which is, if you've ever been in that situation, quite terrifying.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of a mini scenario today. It was just a local bushfire warning at first, but within 2 hours, towers were down, power was out, and the roads were jammed. You tried to get a text to your partner, but there was no signal. Tried the radio. Static. All the tools we rely on, gone in an instant. What now? So that's what we're going to try and answer today. What happens in this kind of scenario? And this is not, this is a cool little mini scenario that we just got made up, but a version of this actually happened to us. So I live in a rural area. 2019, the very famous Australian bushfires came through this area. And one of the things we lost very quickly was communications through phone, because there is one main tower that services this entire area. And if it goes down, which it regularly does go down, but this time it was a case of it being destroyed by fire. And all of a sudden we had a lot of people who couldn't communicate very well running around, and we were trying to coordinate an effort to stop people's houses being burnt. So we had to switch to an alternative means of communication. Very luckily, we have prepared people in our community, me being one of them, crazy weirdo preppers who store up many UHF radios. And we also had a lot of people going out and buying UHF radios. So UHF radios then became, for a while there, our primary way of communicating whilst fighting that fire.
And look, I reckon that's like having a single point of communication or a single type of communication is like deadly in itself. I don't think anywhere through the military would we have ever just had one means of communication when we were out and about, when we're walking around the fields. And I think that is equally important in the situations that we're talking about today, or even just day-to-day life. If you think about it, if your phone goes down, if that one tower goes down, what else? Where do you go next to try and get a message out to those that need to know, to your loved ones, or to get some information yourself? Where do you go next?
So touching on that, a lot of the communications practices and ideas that we have stem out of the military, out of our time in the military, and how we used communications in there, and why it was so important. And you kind of talked about it there, that there was multiple forms, but there's also multiple forms of just talking or communicating face-to-face or person-to-person. So and people don't realize this. It's like, if you need to communicate with someone, you sit down and talk to them. What if you can't talk to someone? What do you do then? So things like hand signals were quite a big form of communication when we were in the military. Things like the code words or RATEL or the way we talk, the way we form messages. So we'll touch on that today as well. How we actually communicate, what makes it easier for people to understand us when we communicate, and then different forms as well.
And just remembering one thing we did come across often, and probably still do today, is people that don't talk your language. Like, how much does your communication break down straight away if the person sitting across from you doesn't speak the same tribal language that you do?
Nor speak English.
Very good.
Cool. So how do humans communicate? For starters, let's have a think about that before we jump into all the sexy stuff, talking about radios and GPS trackers and mesh-tastic, little nodes and things like that. Just how do we communicate as humans?
So if you think about this, as humans, we are natural communicators. We're naturally part of a social network, a natural part of a tribe. So we want to communicate often. In our primate species, it is a lot of both verbal or vocalization and non-verbal cues that we use. So when we talk about that problem of like, I don't speak the language, you can use non-verbal measures to get your message across to try and communicate with the person in front of you or persons in front of you at the time. When we talk, you have a listen to the patter of when people talk. There's patterns and rhythms to when people talk, and that lets you know which way, when people are excited, they talk at a faster rhythm or rate. When they're relaxed, it's a slower, more chilled sort of rhythm. So you can immediately, without knowing any of the content of what they're talking about, get the idea of what, if something exciting is going on, I need to know now, or if I can just take a breather back. And you'll have instantaneous physiological responses to those patterns, even if you do not know the tribal language.
Yeah. I did read somewhere that, I don't know how they come up with these numbers, but they estimate 70% of language, or some, I've actually seen it up to 90% of language is not the language itself. So not the understandable words that we can, talk in English at each other. It's all the rest of it. So it's the body cues, it's facial recognition, it's knowing the tone, the meter, all that sort of stuff that people are doing, how they're standing, how quickly they're talking, all that goes into actually understanding someone.
So, which is, I think, a super important starting sort of point. But when we're getting to more now communicating amongst people, all right, we've got a common language that we can talk amongst. And that common language can differ, even if you speak the same language, same tribal language. How do you use some key markers to sort of get that message across, make sure that it's heard and get it back to you? Make sure that you know that they know what you know that they know.
So there is, really you can look at language from a perspective which is a pattern. And it's patterns that we recognise, and human beings are quite good at recognition of patterns. This really got reinforced to me actually when I was trying to learn Spanish, which I failed at. Do not speak any Spanish still to this day.
Hola.
Hola. But when we were learning it, they were talking about conjugating verbs and blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I actually had to go back and have a think about how I speak English to start off with. And maybe I was taught this in school, but I definitely don't remember it. Conjugation of verbs and actually breaking down English to how we speak English. For me, it was just a phonetic thing. Like, you pick up stuff and you pick up the rules, and something sounds right to us. I don't necessarily know. I do now, but I didn't necessarily know growing up why it sounds right. It's just the right thing. So, what's the a mouse or mice? So a moose should be
Mises?
Meese?
Mooses?
It's mooses, right? But why isn't it mouses? So that's just one of those examples of English, and it's got its own rules and then its own. It breaks the rules a lot, English.
That's one of the most complicated languages on the planet.
Yeah. But the point is we recognise patterns. And so we would actually formalise that in the military. We would have certain patterns that we would use, and you would expect to hear certain information. So if somebody sent you a 9-liner, for example, in the military, you would know what information you would be expecting to hear. You'd have these proformas or these acronyms or something like that you could actually utilise to know that the information is there. So if somebody's transmitting to you and a piece wasn't there, you would go, oh, that piece is missing because I'm expecting that piece of information.
And they're really good to know, to have these, if you know within your communication network to use these sort of patterns, proformas, or acronyms. We use them a lot in the medical world as well because we want to get detailed information across really fast and exactly that, know when something's missing so we can act on it really quick. And we use all those sorts of little things. So you'll have to develop ones within your network that works well, that the people at the other end are expecting, and that way they can know either you're in person or if you're sending information from far away over the radio, over the phone, it cuts out, comes back in, they will know when that bit of information is missing and be able to ask you to go back and recheck for that bit of information. So I think those sorts of knowing those patterns or knowing those sorts of things to look out for, those acronyms and that, are really good to set up as part of your survival preparation.
Can you remember what a 9-liner is?
No, off the top of my head. No.
It's for those who are watching and heard me say 9-liner and you're like, what the hell is that? It's just a military form. It's not literally 9 lines of information basically that you're putting across. But I data dumped it.
It would be like, not line 1 be your location. Line 2 is a pickup location. Line 3 is the type of incident that's happened. Line 4 would be how many casualties you got. Line 5 is how big the threat is in the area. Line 6 is what sort of help do you need to come in. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Other versions of this, the UK law enforcement and emergency services started using one called methane. So that was essentially, if I can remember it correctly, major incident. So that would be the first call that you'd put over the radio network telling everyone like, hey, this is something serious, because there's obviously multiple people on a radio network. So everyone needs to know, shut up, stop talking about whatever you're talking. If you're ordering a pizza or, telling somebody about how bad the coffee is, stop talking because we've got a major incident now. Exact location, type of event, hazards, access routes in and out, number of casualties, and emergency services required. Nailed it. So that's it. That's in methane performance. That's a version of it. We've actually got our own version that we have developed, which you can check out if you want to. It's currently up on the website in the Preparedness Fundamentals course, which is our second course that we've got up. So we've got the Risk Readiness Protocol, which is the first course that you should jump on, check it out. It's all about planning. It's all about thinking about this sort of stuff. The next one is actually getting into prepping, getting into how to be more prepared. And hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, the fitness course should be up.
Just about ready.
Yep. And I am in the background starting to work on the communications course as well. It's probably about 6th on the list at the moment. So eventually we will have a standalone course on communications too. But for now, you can get a little bit of an overview if you check out the Preparedness Fundamentals course.
Jump in, have a look, tell us what you think.
All right. Let's have a quick chat about PACE planning.
We talk about PACE a few times, and it comes up often because we use the acronym PACE all throughout sort of our survival preparation in a lot of different means. But your PACE planning, so going over it once again, PACE breaks down to your primary. So whatever your primary way of communication is, and that might be your telephone or something like that. Your alternate, if you've got radios or that kind of system set up. Your contingency, so if they fail, what other means of communication do you have? 2 tins and a bit of string. And your emergency. smoke and fire signals, maybe. That's how we sort of set out the pace planning, and you want to have that set up in mind, remembering the people you're communicating to need to have that in mind, so they're watching or listening out for these kind of communications in your planning.
Where do you have jungle drums?
Jungle drums. It's just next to smoke signals.
All right, yeah. Yeah, mine goes mobile phone, then jungle drums.
Yeah.
Then sending a raven, then smoke signals in the form of burning everything into the ground. No, in a serious note though, so primary for most people is a mobile phone. Alternate might be UHF communications. Contingency, you might think about satellite communications or something, so we're talking about Starlink, we're talking about sat phones, we're talking about GPS sort of units that can also send limited amounts of information, like your Garmin InReach type equipment. And then maybe emergency, you can have dead drops or letter, at some sort of protocol where you're going to leave notes in certain areas at certain times. You can have smoke signals, you can have mirrors, whatever it is.
Yeah. And you've got to think about these in the context of like, all right, what are we going to use? What are the people at the other end going to use? How do we activate them to the next device or things like that? And believe it or not, cost is a big thing. Some of these things do cost a lot to have them up and running all the time. So you have to evaluate how much is that worth me having that phone on 24/7, just waiting for the day.
Yeah. All the satellite communications generally cost a bit of money. So something to definitely consider. What other, we've mentioned a few there, but what other sort of things could we use as communication devices?
So other things we can sort of think about for communication devices is like, we've talked about the immediate ones that we use, like our phone, like the radios. We need probably some other ways of like, I think you mentioned briefly, like what we call dead drops, leaving information in place so someone turns up. Now, we used to use these a lot in defence in, say, a rendezvous point, have your alternate and your primary. And if you had to leave the primary, you'd leave some sort of message behind in which direction you're going to move so people know where you're heading next.
But that's one of those, again, I have a tendency of dropping words and assuming that people know what it means. Dead drop is not like I'm dropping dead bodies everywhere. You're leaving an information somewhere. It's dead because you're not there actively communicating with the person in the moment. The information is left and you go and you don't actually see the person. It's from the spook world. It's very spy type activity. I've been getting into and trying to get my head around Mesh-tastic. So what's called LoRa or long-range radio communications. I think it's a really cool thing and it's got a lot of potential. I'm going to have a bit more of a play with it. I'm going to build it into one of the future courses that we've got, one of the online courses that we've got coming up. But yeah, it's a really nifty thing where you can actually set up your own nodes and you can communicate limited amounts of data through it, so text and maybe GPS. And if you connect enough nodes, and it's a decentralized network as well, so it's all on you. You set them up, you maintain them. It's essentially you're creating your own cell network. And a lot of the stuff I've been reading about this has a lot of potential for emergency services. So you don't even necessarily need to set it up. You could set it up at the point. You just, as long as you've got those nodes ready to go, then you've got one, I've got one, 3 other people have one. We could set up ones that are static, but they can also be mobile as well, as long as they can communicate or reach.
Fly one out in your drone.
Fly one out in the drone. Yeah.
I like this idea because, again, it removes that central point of communication. So even things like our satellite communication, let's say we're using Starlink, something like that, it still relies on one central point. It still goes through one point to get that communication through. And if that point fails for whatever reason, you no longer have communication. So, look, it sounds a little bit more intensive setting it up yourself, but you've got a little bit more control, a little bit more durability in it.
Maybe I said the wrong thing on X. And Elon Musk's like, screw you, buddy.
It's shutting you down.
I'm shutting you down. No more internet.
This podcast in 3, 2, 1.
All right. Well, let's have a quick talk about maybe building plans. So you have mentioned this earlier, and I think this is a really important thing. It's really important in multiple areas of preparedness, is making sure that you've pre-planned, you've pre-thought these sort of things out, and that everyone is working off the same sheet of music. Because I could have the best comms plan in the world. If I haven't told you what it is, then it's almost useless. So let's say you live 80, well, probably closer to 90 something Ks away from me, an emergency happens. And I go, all right, bang, emergency level 1 has happened. Excellent. I'm switching straight to UHF communications, and we, operate on channel, 13 or whatever. Thanks, dogs. And
Just communicating.
They're communicating to us. If you don't know that, it's totally useless. So the entire time you could be trying to reach me on mobile phone, but I might not have my mobile phone. I might not be monitoring it. Or you might be on the UHF radio on channel 35, which is totally useless because we're not going to be able to communicate with each other. So making sure that we have a plan and we're all working, all the people within your team, your unit, your family, whatever it is, your mutual assistance group, are working off that same sheet of music.
So things you want to consider in this plan, like we alluded to it a little bit, is like, all right, we've talked about the PACE plan, so your different modes of operation. So you're going to have a communication plan for each of these different modes. So let's say you're going to your radio. So you've moved from your phone, you've got no luck getting through to anyone, but on your radio, everyone's going to be on channel 31, whatever you want. But that's got to be pre-part of your plan. Timings. You can't be sitting there on your radio all the time. So we use this a lot in defence, was setting up scheduled timings. How often are you going to communicate with someone? Once a day, twice a day. And then lost communications. If I don't hear from you within a 24, 48-hour period, what's the next step? Do I move to the next set of communications down in my PACE plan? Or do I move to another position to maybe meet up with you or improve my communications and try and meet you at the next sched timing?
Yeah, I think that for me is one of the most important things, and that's where I was seeing things fall apart actually in the field, where there is no actionable consequence for something happening. So I've seen communication plans, and then they say, okay, I'm going to try and get you on mobile phone, and if that doesn't work, I'll do UHF. And I've said to them, like, at what point do you do that? At what point do you give up on the primary source? So is it just one call? Didn't get through, bang, straight onto UHF. Because, I never answer my calls. You've got to call me like 2 or 3 times to get through to me.
Just keep calling until your battery runs out.
Yeah. Is it 2 calls? Is it 2 missed calls within 5 minutes and a text message? And if there's no response within X amount of time, that's what I'm talking about. Is usually you put an amount, so how many times you try and communicate, or most likely a time limit on it. So you go, okay, I'm going to try and call you for 5 minutes. Over that time period, call and text. If I get no answer after 5 minutes, after 10 minutes, I'll switch to UHF. And so we both know that now. So if I look at my phone, I go, whoa, I've got 3 missed calls and 2 messages. And I go, oh, wait, that was 10 minutes ago. Quick, turn on my radio. Chances are you'll then be communicating or trying to communicate with me on the radio, as an example.
Exactly. Now, I think that is one of the points where I've seen a lot of plans fall down, is they don't have that kind of detail in them of when and where to move next.
Yep. And yeah, it ties in with things like rendezvous points, RV points. I'm actually, just a side note here, whenever I say RV points to people, it must be a very military term. I'm guessing. Yeah. Because I say RV points and people just look at me blankly like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I go, rendezvous. And probably still about 50% of people are like, what?
Only the French speakers understand.
Oui. You can see my French is about as good as my Spanish.
Very good.
Yep. Yeah, so a lot of communications ties in with rendezvous points, making sure that we can, meet people if we need to at certain points, and communicate with them at certain times. So what you were talking about, we call in the military SCEDs, scheduled check-ins, things like that. It might be 5 minutes after the hour, every hour, for 5 minutes, as an example. And so what that means is I will try and contact you at 12:05, so 5 minutes after the hour, and I will try to contact you for 5 minutes. So from 12:05 to 12:10, I will be reaching out, trying to contact you. And if I don't hear anything, then, I'll switch communications, or, it'll just be nothing heard or whatever. Because again, there needs to be a consequence for no communication. So it's not just, something didn't work on the communications I was using, I need to switch. At what point do you then go, if I've not heard from you for X amount of time, now what do I do? Which is another one that I've seen in the past where people haven't done anything and something's gone wrong, and the other person's like, they didn't contact me. True story, right? Didn't happen to me, but happened to someone I was working for. They get a call from a news agency. And they said, we've got a reporter out in Afghanistan, and we haven't heard from them. So, can you use some of your sources or whatever and work up a plan and see if you can find them? Yep, no worries. How long have they been gone for? Oh, well, the last time we heard from them was on Friday. Like, it's Monday afternoon. It's Monday afternoon, and you've had a female reporter missing for 3 days. As it turned out, they were okay, but they just didn't have a plan to enact, and so they ended up like, who do we call? Let's call this person. They know someone, someone who knows someone. But there should have been a solid plan there. If you do not hear from this person after 12 hours, enact this step here. So that's a sort of family plan or like plan that you want to try and implement with the people that you're working with, or your family, or whoever it is.
Yeah. I mean, these plans work just as well. Yeah, look, we're talking about overseas in operations, but they work with your kids when you send them out. You will call me at this time. If I haven't heard from you, I'm coming to pick you up at this time. I've used it many a times for when my kids were teenagers. Yeah,
totally. It is one thing I like to try and remind people, especially when we're doing courses. A lot of the stuff we talk about, we formalize it, we codify it, we give it acronyms and things like that and make it quite serious, and it's all, and because it is stuff that we did in the military. But a lot of these things people do anyway. Mm. So a form of a communication plan is, imagine yourself at a dinner party right now, and there's a group of family and friends around the dinner table, and everyone's enjoying a succulent Chinese meal, and you've just thought, wait, I've got dessert coming, and I forgot to get a key ingredient for dessert. So would you, without saying a word to anyone, in the middle of dinner, stand up, walk out, and go down the street and get that dessert? Or would you go, I've forgotten the cream for dessert. I'm going to pop to the shops. I'll be 5 minutes. Does anyone want anything? So that is a form of a communication plan right there. And that's something that everyone does just about every day. You've told someone where you're going. You've told someone how long you're going to be. You've told someone basically the means of how you're getting there and coming back. So it's like a journey management plan and a communication plan in one. But yeah, again, you do that all the time. You've done it with your kids. This is just a formalization of that process. Some people even like to track their kids.
Can do that.
Yeah.
Put it on their phone.
Yeah. If you give them a phone, which is this does lead us into another sort of thing. We're talking about navigation, but there's a crossover of navigation and communications where you're using navigation as a form of communication. So telling somebody where you are, if somebody can track you, then that is a form of communication.
As long as you know what sort of points in mind that you've got. So you might have certain checkpoints you want them to check in at. So when you reach this point, you will call me. When you reach point B, you will call me. And that way you know that person is somewhere between point A and B if they do not communicate with you at that next point.
Yep. So a heap of, you can do share my location through various apps. You can use Find My iPhone or Find My Friends or things like that. There are standalone apps like Life 360, where you can quite easily track people, see what they're going, see where they're going, what they're doing, or even standalone units like Garmin InReach is quite a good one. So I've used that for people. I've used one myself, and then also tracked someone overseas when they got deployed to an area that was a bit, potentially dangerous. They had that on all the time, so we could see where they were all the time. So if something went wrong, you could see, hey, that's not the path that they're meant to be on. They're probably just being kidnapped by the bad guys.
Then you can follow it up straight away, so it gives you immediate sort of communication with that person at all times. And that's a perfect example of a non-verbal communication.
Yep. Apparently the Meshtastic as well is really good for this.
Yeah.
What I was talking about before. Everyone can link up using an app with it, and you can share your location so everyone can see where everyone else is. Again, reliant only on its own nodes. So you could do this out in the wilderness, I imagine.
Sounds cool. Sounds very cool.
I'll try it. Okay, so yeah, just again, the reason we're talking about this is some of this stuff is built into the course that I was talking about that is up on the website now, the Prepping Foundations course, or the Preparedness Foundations course. So there's a little bit of comms in there as well to get you thinking, but we're going to be building a much bigger, better, all dancing, all singing comms course in the future. Also, if you want to have a chat about this, you can contact us. We do have a Discord now that I've got up and running. It's what all the young kids are doing. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Apparently, it's just an area where you chat.
Yeah. Apparently, I've got no idea.
I mean, I grew up with internet relay chat. So there'll be some like old people right now, Gen Xers, elder millennials who are like, oh my God, IRC. Wow.
Does it still exist?
No, I don't think so. I hope not. I think about stuff I used to do on the internet, and it just wouldn't happen nowadays. You jump on and chat to it, like as a kid. I was chatting to like, oh hi, I'm a 45-year-old male in blah blah blah. Like, oh yeah, cool. I'm a 13-year-old in Australia. Anyway, that's bad communication. Anything else? Do you want to add in?
No, I think that's pretty good. I think getting a grounding, getting an understanding what communication is, starting to get a hand around what alternate plans and what it means to make a good comms plan and a good comms schedule is some of the most important factors in this. You start to have a look around now and see what you can find, what devices, apps, and other implementations that you can utilise out there to start to build a comms plan in your head, and then start to talk to your local community, your local tribe, and see what you guys want to use.
Yeah. The old adage, one is none, two is one, I think really comes to the fore here. There's been too many times in my life where I've been caught with just my mobile phone and no connectivity. Somewhere around the world, I've got off of like, yep, cool, we're here. I've set my phone up for, mobile roaming into this country, and for whatever reason, it doesn't work. And now I'm somewhere in the world and I've got zero communications with anyone until I can go get a local SIM or something like that. So thinking about that, thinking about your redundancies, don't just rely on your mobile phone. Carry an extra battery as well is another one. So your little power packs for you to charge up your phone, because a dead phone is no good. And then think about what alternate you could also have. So for example, because I'm country, I've got a CB radio in my car because it's a ute and you have to have one.
Have to have a ute and with a CB radio and a rhubarb.
It's the law, right? If you get caught without a CB in your ute in Australia, if you're listening to this and you're not in Australia, a ute stands for a utility vehicle, which is not an SUV. It is a pickup truck. It's what Aussies call pickup trucks.
You get kicked out of the country.
You will actually get kicked out of the country. They'll say, get back to the city, mate, before I punch your lights out. Yeah, so that's a form of communications there, is UHF radio, but I've also got handheld UHF radios in my car. that I quite often kick around with.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I think that will do for today for the art of communication. A little bit of a taster, really, of comms. There's nothing too revolutionary that we're talking about, I think. Hopefully it just gets you thinking, makes you think about what your comms plan is, what your pace plan is for your communications. If you have, like most people, you've got a plan. And some people have a pa, but very rarely do people have a pack or a pace plan. I just thought of that off the top of my head. Plan. Just the primary.
The primary plan only.
Yep. Have a think about it. Have a think about what you could do and have a think about communicating your communications plan to other people. But apart from that, I think that'll do it for today. Any closing thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to drop on the people?
No, just make sure that your communications are ready. Keep your testing them often, because if it pick it up and it's flat batteries, it's just not going to work.
Mm. And me learn 'em, speak 'em good England.
That too.
Yeah. All right. Until next time. Stay safe out there.
See you then.
Bye. That is the end of this tale. Until next we meet, keep the fires burning. Fra Eldi Verissimo.